going to call the meeting to order. I believe we are being electronically recorded, so make a note of that. I'm calling to order the meeting on Thursday, August 10th, 2017, of the Community Preservation Committee. I'd like to welcome Mr. Howell, who's our representative from the Selectmen, Mr. Crowley, and Mr. McCready. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Joe Powers, who's a new member of the Community Preservation Committee as a representative of the HDHC. Did everyone receive the minutes from the May 11, 2017 meeting?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Can I have a motion regarding those minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion about the minutes?
Nope.
No?
Not here.
All those in favor of approving the minutes of the May 11th, 2017 meeting?
Aye.
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 Abstain.
4 ayes, 1 abstention. Okay, and as you know, we did not have a quorum for June or July, so there were no meeting minutes. Okay, under new business, we have reorganization. Right now, I'm acting as chair temporarily. So let's open a discussion about reorganization. Any thoughts?
Well, my thinking is that until Bob's situation is ameliorated in some fashion, that I think we just need to postpone any kind of organizational discussion. There's nothing which compels us to,
Yes,
there is?
the charter.
Oh,
The first meeting after July 1st, you have to reorganize.
oh.
Annually.
Okay. Any thoughts? I mean, Joe's new, so it's got to be the rest of
I have a question.
Sure.
What officers do you typically name? Is it
We have a chair and a
chair,
vice chair.
clerk? Just chair and vice chair?
Yes,
Thank you.
and a clerk. And a clerk. Any thoughts?
Yes, Kathy, I would like to nominate you for chair.
And I will not accept that.
Second.
I will not be able to do that, so we need to come up with some other thoughts here. I'm sure that everybody's given it some thought.
If we, just to play out some scenarios here, because of Bob's situation, if we organize and designate a chair and a vice chair, and Bob gets placed on the committee, as we all hope he will, can we have another organizational discussion?
I don't know.
That's an interesting thought, but I wouldn't go down that.
Yeah. Anyone else? We don't want to have too many long pauses for the TV program.
Maybe, Kathy, maybe based on your comment, maybe the question should be asked, would anybody be interested in becoming chairman?
That is correct. I am a little concerned that we don't have a full
We don't have
contingency
a full
here.
contingency tonight, but we do need to make the
I agree.
determination
I agree.
tonight with the contingency we have.
Yes. Is there anyone that is interested in serving as chairman this coming year? Dave, would you consider it?
That's a long pause. I think, based on the pause, I nominate Dave.
Well, I'd like,
Second.
That is a long pause, because I haven't chaired a committee in this town yet. And I would need the support of all of you.
Well, Dave, you would have my support.
Yeah, my support.
Kathy, vice chair?
yeah, I would continue as vice chair, I just can't chair.
Okay.
Okay. Then there's a nomination on the floor for Dave. Is there a second for that nomination? Oh, that's right, Joe, you've seconded.
Okay. Any other discussion regarding the current slate that's been presented as Dave Nixon chair, Kathy Green as vice chair?
Okay, well, Kathy, I think I need to nominate
Oh,
you as
Yeah,
vice.
okay.
Let's do the
Sorry.
chair
We'll
first.
do the
and then
chair.
we'll
First,
do
and-
the
Let's
vice
do the chair.
Okay?
Okay, motion on the floor is to nominate Dave Nixon as chair of the Community Preservation Committee for this upcoming year, 2017 to 2018. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Not gonna vote for yourself, Dave?
Yeah,
Plausible deniability.
there you go.
Okay, but without Dave voting for himself,
Right.
we don't have,
Okay,
Well, no,
aye.
okay.
Right,
There's the
that's what
quorum.
it's- Right,
But we do, it's majority of those present and voting. So not everyone has to
Okay.
vote, or it could
Okay.
also been an abstention.
okay.
Okay, there we go. Then I'm
There we
fine.
go. all right.
Okay, so now I would like to nominate Kathy for vice chair.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Nomination for Kathy Green for vice chair for the coming year, 2017, 2018. Moved in second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Vote for myself.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Would you like to take over the meeting?
You have the meeting. You have the agenda.
Okay. Okay, moving on. We were expecting a project review status update from the Harwich Historical Society. Instead, they sent just a annual report update, which I'm going to read to you because it's just a few lines. The map project, which was the Walling map project from a couple of years ago, the map was restored and it's now on display in the Brooks Academy Museum. The cannon project is complete. The cannon was mounted on its plinth and now sits on the upper lawn in front of the museum, and a granite plaque explaining its history was created and placed in front of it. A similar plaque was created for the millstone. The millstone has not yet been placed. It awaits getting a date for its placement by the Town Highway Department. Other than that, they have completed all their projects that are outstanding.
Okay. I just have one question,
Mhm.
Kathy. Did they mention why they weren't able to attend the meeting to present that report?
They were just, no, they did not. They were invited to several meetings, and they could not make it,
Okay.
so. Okay, item number 3, item number C, under new business, discussing ideas for assisting potential applicants with their community preservation project applications. When I was reviewing the application for updating, Dave and I had met to review the application, and we kind of bounced some ideas off of each other. And we came up with a couple of things that we just wanted to talk to the committee about. One was a potential one-page application form that would be sort of a precursor to the application that might kind of get some of the big questions out of the way for applicants. And the other was potentially involving the committee more in reviewing applications with the applicants before they come before the committee. So, do you want to talk about the one-page thing, just as a?
Well, the one-page idea came from looking over the CPC based on the Newton model. And if you go onto their website and you see the way they structure it, it's really interesting. It would be difficult. I don't want to go into the phone now and go through the whole thing, but if you get a chance, you can Google it and take a look at the way they structure their CPC application.
And this
It-
is who?
The town of Newton.
Town of Newton.
And so what does the one-page sort of, you know,
It's a synopsis of what CPC is looking for as far as criteria. And it's just the way they developed it. It's almost like bullet points. When you look at it, you see it, and you follow it. And they have it's not just one meeting that they they have a series of meetings, subcommittee meetings with the applicants to give them direction. Something like what you were talking about when we discussed it. I think it's a great plan. Of course, you know, you folks look at it, then we can have a discussion on it.
Okay.
But Kathy, I think one thing that would be very helpful is granted, it's gonna take a little bit of addition of our time, but for individual members of this committee to sort of be assigned to work with specific applicants.
That's what I was just referring to.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a good idea, because I think no matter how much an applicant sort of reads the form or reads discussion, I think it is helpful to have the personal contact with somebody on this committee who can guide them through the process and guide them through what this committee is concerned about. And then, you know, they'll feel, you know, after they go through that process, that maybe they have an advocate on this committee for that application. So I'd be in favor, and I'd be willing to spend some additional time working with some of the applicants in order to sort of review what the concerns of this committee normally are.
Question, if it comes under the particular bucket of the CPC, those people that represent that particular item, would they be included in a discussion with someone who's coming for money from that bucket, from that?
That's a very good question, Dave, because of the potential sort of, not real conflict, but maybe appearance of conflict. And I think it might be better to have somebody who is not
Outside
outside of that. Now, being a representative for the planning board, I'm not connected with any of the entities that come before us with applications. Now,
right, being an advocate for rec, right.
would be an advocate for rec, so maybe it wouldn't be a good idea for you to, you know, except for your role on the recreation committee, but with regard to your role on this committee, it may not be a good idea for you to be guiding through the rec applications. But that doesn't prevent you from guiding through historic, affordable housing, conservation type applications.
Jim, can you just direct your
Yeah.
comments? I'm having difficulty hearing.
Oh, okay. Well, what I was saying, Dave had asked the question as to whether or not, with him being a member of Recreation, you know, whether it would be a good idea for him to basically be working with the Recreation applications, and I don't think it would be. I think in my case, being a representative for the planning board, the planning board doesn't have any applications, so therefore I think I could potentially work with any of the entities that come before us.
As would myself and
Right.
Cindy.
Right, exactly. And so maybe actually it would be a better idea for, you know, and it depends on people's time, for the ones who work with the applicants to be representatives from entities, you know, or selectmen's representatives to this committee that don't have applications coming before the committee.
Bob, do you have any comments about what we're talking about? I mean, since you've been a long-standing member of CPC.
I think the idea, could you talk into the microphone? Sure.
I think, and I've recommended before, the idea of, or at least in the past year, the same idea of working with members as being a step that I think would move us forward. I think that I don't perhaps have the same concern that Jim did with regard to conflict of interest. I think that the members that are here representing areas that may be before the organization are, to an extent, that's one of the reasons that they're on CPC, is to advocate for, is to be advocates for their areas. Besides their responsibilities with regard to following the Act in general, so I think that's aids the conversation, particularly their presumed relationship with some of the vested, interested parties.
Okay. Well, I guess, it's sort of taking a more proactive, direction in trying to reach out to applicants before the applications are actually submitted. So if that's something that we want to do for this coming application, season, so to speak, we need to take our list of applicants, prior applicants, and sort of divide it up and reach out, I would imagine.
Well, at what point, Kathy, do we find out which entities are going to be submitting applications?
We would not know until the deadline, actually.
October
Not till the deadline, okay.
Right.
the 1st.
So maybe what we want to do.
When is that deadline?
I think it's October 2nd this year. Is that the date on the application? It's October 2nd.
Thank you.
What we may want to do then, as opposed to dividing them up initially, we may want to just reach out to all those that have submitted applications to see if they're going to be submitting an application this year.
Okay.
Because some of them may not be submitting one this year, even though
True.
they've submitted it in the
True.
past.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and then once we get that list, then we, and if we could get that list by the time that we meet in September,
Mm-hmm.
then we can talk about, who is best suited to assist each individual applicant, and that gives us basically the month of September to do that before the deadline.
Right, well, or
Does-
2.5 weeks, really, or,
Does the open meeting statute have any bearing on this?
the public information meeting? Is that what you're talking about?
The public information?
The public information meeting? That,
Yes.
yes, it does.
If I understand the question correctly, were you asking if a public informational hearing as described in the bylaw, it needs to adhere to the open meeting law? Is that what? It does.
Yeah, but the meeting.
No, but I don't think that's
No,
what
That's
you're
my
asking.
that's what I
question.
was,
Okay.
the meeting that, let's say, for
The
discussion
liaison meetings?
purposes, liaisons meeting with potential grant
Yeah,
applicants.
if I may.
Mhm.
And it's just an opinion. I'm trying not to play an attorney on TV, but I am responsible in another community for the open meeting law and all that. If each of us were to have a liaison connection to an application for either a public or a private entity, there's nothing that would preclude us from having, as one person, having a meeting with one other person.
Okay.
What you really can get into problems with is if I come back and send an email to all of you and say, this is great, and this is what I've learned, and we go back and forth. That's the serial deliberation part. But there's nothing that would prevent a member discharging their responsibilities under our bylaw to do exactly what Jim has mentioned.
Yes, and I agree with you on
Yeah,
that.
yep,
Yeah, especially since that effort would not be a part of a decision-making process.
exactly.
Right,
It would be just giving sort of
technical advice.
technical advice to
Exactly.
the applicant with regard to the types of things the committee is concerned about. The deliberation and the questioning of this committee would still occur in a public meeting, which was publicly noticed, et cetera.
Otherwise, we get no work done.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly can pull together a list of prior applicants for us to look at and contact. How far back does the committee want me to go? I went back to 2012, 5 or 6 years now, to invite people to the public information meeting.
Not to belabor any points, but not being completely familiar with town of Harwich operation for all this stuff, and knowing that there was going to be, that public information hearing had been scheduled for tonight, correct? And that ties back to the bylaw requirements and everything else, right?
Yep.
So you're asking if we would solicit participants, or in addition to posting?
No, we're just trying to come up with a list to ask potential applicants or prior applicants if they are considering an application for this year, so we can create a list. Is that my understanding?
Yes, right. Yeah,
Would that prevent any, sorry, would that prevent any other person, group, or entity from appearing that night,
No.
or?
Oh, absolutely
Oh,
not.
no.
So it's the beginning, real, well, I don't mean to say the beginning, I'm sure you guys have done a lot of work before that, but you're starting to get a list together, you're starting to get people through the process, is that what you're talking about?
I'm just trying to assist.
Yeah.
This is Mr. Howell.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair, Ms. Chair. I'm just a little concerned, so I just wanted to lay this out. The informational hearing, as it played out last year, seemed to be that people showed up and you gave them information. But that's not what's contained in the law or in our bylaw. And the Board of Selectmen has had a discussion about this. It's really to garner opinions from the town about what they think is a priority for them to address in a given year. It's a hearing, as in you here. So when it's done, you're really soliciting the community to ask what's important to you. And what do you think we need to weigh in on as a project? And then you go forward with the applicants, and then there's a process, which brings me to another question. I've been online, I've looked through a number of sources. Do you have any written procedures about what's expected, not the application, but the process? Because last year, it appeared that there was a requirement that certain people had to go to certain committees and get their assent in order for you to act upon their application. Is there anything in writing that you've adopted by vote?
Other than our application?
Yeah.
I don't believe so, but it's,
Well, there are guidelines for the application.
I'm not talking about that.
So in addition to the
If you
documents-
require somebody to get a vote of some committee, it needs to be in writing that that's what's the requirement, not just you tell them at a meeting. It would have to be adopted as a process and procedure for you,
so it's listed in our application. You're saying that that's not enough?
that you have to go get a vote from a committee? You'd need a policy. I mean, because really that's just an application. I saw that, but I've also seen probably 20 or 30 other towns that I've checked into.
Okay, Kathy, I don't think that's, in my mind, that's never been a requirement.
It's a requirement for all committees to have, if you're on the planning board, then you know very well you operate under 40A.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the requirement to get a vote from another committee. I think the issue that has come up consistently since I've been on this committee is with regard to historic applications and what is a historic resource? And who determines what a historic resource is? And that question has not been able to been answered by numerous applicants.
And I understand your concern. I'm just saying that as a matter of process and legality, people have to know when they enter the process, everyone has the same shot, and they all have to know what's expected of them, and as do the committees themselves. Your application doesn't obligate another committee to give either a positive or a negative recommendation. You really need to put them on notice
So we
in writing
need
that
to-
that's the
we need-
process.
We need to write down that they have to be able to answer questions from this committee.
Other committees need to be made aware that they are being held to that standard, yes.
No, we're not holding any other committees to that standard. I am asking questions of the applicants as to whether or not something is a historic resource, and who makes that determination, and they are unable to answer that.
Well, I'm talking more beyond that. I sat through a few meetings,
Okay.
and I listened, and the question came up, did you go to the XYZ committee? Did you get a vote of recommendation from that committee? I believe that has happened on a number of occasions. I'm just saying you need to codify that.
Madam Chair, are you saying that we need a policy?
Yep.
A written policy?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, then could I ask you, absent a written policy, how do we determine what is a historic resource?
You could do that in conjunction with the historic district. The problem is the construct of that committee from us. The applicants that you've been getting transcend that in large measure. They're mostly interested in buildings, physical entities. And I've seen the problem that you're talking about.
Right.
That's when they get more into records preservation or something that's more
Yeah,
nebulous.
that's where the issue
And they
is
don't
coming.
really have a base of expertise on that committee to weigh in on that. That's not really part of their charge. So you're right, that is kind of a conundrum.
Yeah, and so I think all that we're doing is we're asking the applicants to try to give us guidance on that, and they're not able to do that.
As Dave suggested, though, you need to have that at the very beginning, that is a policy, that's what you ask for, and that's what you expect other committees to do for them. Because there isn't anything in writing. At my point in the Board of Selectmen, we're starting to pull back and look at things and see how transparent it is for the public to be able to gain access and whether they could reasonably know, sitting online or coming here, what's expected of them so that they could proceed forward, more than just the application. What would be expected of you? Who do you need to see? How do you need to proceed? And it's as simple as what Dave said, just put it in
So you're
writing.
saying that instead of individual members of this committee working with those applicants, instead of doing that, we should just have written policies?
No, you could do both.
Okay.
But,
Then
I mean, I would presume that the
I'm
people
sorry
that are
for
going out
getting
into the community to work with people would be working on the basis of whatever it is you adopted as a policy.
Mhm.
And that would be perfectly fine. They're not mutually exclusive. Matter of fact, it would be helpful.
Okay.
Yes.
Madam Chair, can I go back to your earlier question about how many should you reach out to?
Yeah.
Is there an average over those years you were looking at? Do you get, does it vary year to year from the number of projects?
I think
or-
the number of applications per year is about 10 to 12.
And how
every
many
year.
years did you say you were looking back on?
I went back to 2012, because that's when I joined the committee.
Sure,
And I
yep.
had the actual applications from there.
Right.
And most of them were duplications. In other words.
Right, sure. Repeat offenders.
Right,
Sorry. Bad phrase, my word, sorry about that.
right.
But yeah, you saw some that were year over year.
many,
or- yeah,
many, many.
okay. How many do you think you'd be talking about? I guess I'm trying to make you answer your own question, I apologize, but,
I don't know, probably the current list was about 20 or so.
that sounds manageable, I think.
Yeah, 20, maybe a few more, but that's about it.
I'm trying to grasp this concept of providing technical assistance. A potential applicant, let's say, calls me and we sit down and we talk about their idea. And if off the bat, in my own mind, I'm saying, this is not eligible. As a provider of technical assistance, would I be obliged to tell them that? I would be. Even though they didn't come before this committee
Right.
and have that determination made.
Yeah, I
Does that
think you'd
put,
be,
does that put,
But that doesn't preclude them from coming
right,
to
it
the
doesn't
application.
preclude them from coming anyway.
yeah,
But yes, I think you'd be obliged to give them your opinion on that, because when they come in front of us, those are the questions you're going to ask. But again, as Dave said, that would not prevent them from still submitting the application and coming before us.
Because if I may follow on that, because what I would imagine is, as a member here, and we have a discussion relative to that proposed applicant, one of my first questions would be to our colleague, what were your thoughts? How did you know, what did you talk about, kind of thing? So I would seek that colleague's opinion, and that would be helpful for me in framing my mindset, but doesn't stop them, as has been said, from coming forward. I think the spirit and the intent is where we want to be. That we're offering an opportunity for assistance of some level. Because I'm very familiar with CPA and CPC, but not really here in Harwich, but I can imagine for folks it can be daunting, and to work, through any level of government. So any assistance we can give, I think, is, the spirit is right and it's beneficial, in my opinion.
well, it would also help prevent folks who, if it's clearly not a project that meets the CPA requirements, putting them through the whole process of submitting an application, coming before the committee presenting, when they knew in advance that in all likelihood it's probably not going to be approved. So it would save them the time of completing and submitting the application. I like the concept, yeah. How you roll it out.
How we roll it out in the time frame, right?
Kathy, what I suggest is that, this whole process would be something new to us. And what I suggest is that we try it and see if it works.
Right.
If it works, good. If it doesn't work, then we try something else.
So do we put something out there which says to potential applicants, if you wish to have some technical advice or assistance in reviewing your potential project, contact Jim, Dan, or Cindy?
Well, I thought, Kathy, that what you were doing was you were going to send out an email to past applicants to see if they were going to be submitting an application this year. At our next meeting, you would get a list of who we knew right now, and again, through the public hearing, there may be others, that would also be interested. And then at that point, we could sort of, figure out the best way to give them that technical assistance.
Right. So I'll create a list,
Okay.
yes.
Sorry, just another question based on the bylaw. When it talks about one or more, has it been the practice? How many have you typically had for the public informational hearings?
What are you referring to?
711 of the bylaw, Community Preservation Committee under Section B on B1 duties. See, I think it's the second sentence of that first. As part of its studies, the committee shall hold one or more public informational hearings on the.
We typically hold one.
You hold one, okay.
In many past years, we've had one attendee.
No doubt, yep.
I mean,
I'm
prior to the last couple of years.
Because we're talking about an October 2nd deadline.
I know.
And we're middle of August, and so, yeah. Because if we had more than one, that obviously impacts our scheduling, so,
Sure.
thank you.
Regarding the public information meeting, we need to schedule that. I know the date was thrown out of potentially August 31st, but I don't believe that we have enough members to form a quorum for that. So we're going to have to pick another date for the public information meeting, which I would assume we're going to try to do it, if this committee's in agreement, at the September meeting.
Yeah.
So,
That's what I would recommend.
That's the 14th?
no, when is it?
I'll look on this.
Okay.
I had a calendar, I don't see the calendar. One of those things. Probably big, and I probably removed it. So, I do believe it is the 14th.
Yes, it is the 14th.
So
Did-
Thursday, yep.
Did we need to make a motion for that, to change that date, Jan?
We move for everything.
Oh, okay. Can I have a motion to declare that we're going to have the public information hearing
So moved.
Second.
on
Second.
September 14th at 6 PM, with our regularly scheduled meeting to follow at 6:30, or shall we
I would
give more
say
time?
Kathy, I would say no sooner than 6:30.
No sooner than 6:30, like we did before.
Just in case there's a lot of people
Okay.
at the public hearing, and the public hearing goes longer, because we don't want to,
Right,
have to cut off the public
Sure.
hearing.
We have to have set times. What are you saying?
So, no sooner than 6:30, that the regular meeting would start no sooner than 6:30.
Okay.
Can I ask a question slash possibly make a suggestion? Is there anything that prevents us from identifying the meeting, a meeting of the CPC on that date and at that time, and include that at 6 PM there will be a public informational hearing? So the public informational hearing will be posted in accordance with the requirements, but it can be part and parcel of the overall meeting notice for this committee. Like, why do we break it
It doesn't have to
out?
be separate.
Correct, right,
Oh, no, I was told it had to be,
okay.
so I don't know. I was just told it had to be.
I kicked the
That's,
hornet's
we didn't until this year, And then when I asked for assistance on the instructions, I was told it had to be 2 separate agendas. That's what you're saying, that you want it on one.
Well, I'm saying meeting notice, which is, I don't want to go too far afield. Both components have to be handled in accordance with the open meeting law. But the hearing portion of it has additional extra requirements. Because we call it public informational, I would imagine it's a public hearing. And that's where, I know it's specific in our bylaws, but it's also under the open meeting law, the requirements of the additional timeframes.
Right.
Meaning, public meeting, it needs to meet the 48 hours, not including Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. But the public hearing part of it has to be, was it 2 weeks?
Yep, the
Yeah,
posting.
posted 2 weeks and all that, yeah. So you would need to do a notice of a public informational hearing in advance of the 48-hour rule.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
2 weeks prior. But you want to do what?
So what I'm trying to convey overall is that a public meeting does not necessarily have to have a hearing as part of it. But a hearing of any sort always needs to be a part of a public meeting.
You lost me.
I think,
I didn't know that.
I think what you're saying, we're a little off. A public hearing, because Anita did verify with somebody in the state, she was concerned that we couldn't have our public information hearing and our regular meeting on the same night. So she verified with the state and got back to me and said we were okay, we could have the informational hearing and our regular meeting on the same night, but our agendas had to be separated. No?
Well, don't the Board of Selectmen have public hearings all the time? They have their regular meeting, and then they defer and open up the public meeting, and then,
Would have the same, historic would have the
Right.
same.
I'm sorry for the confusion,
Yeah,
but Mr.
maybe.
Powers is 100% correct.
Okay.
So you can hold a public hearing first and then go into your regular meeting, correct? Okay. But that has to be advertised 2 weeks prior. So it would be the public hearing notice, meeting notice would have to go into the paper 2 weeks prior.
and that would include our regular meeting.
It doesn't have to.
But it would,
But it could.
on the same piece of
Absolutely,
paper, it's
absolutely.
Yeah, as long as it was
Absolutely,
2 weeks
Just make
prior.
sure with
Right.
Anita that the agendas can now be on the same page like we had done, just so we get it straight, no? Do it your way.
No, no,
I just want the official, like I said, it's like it's cursed, I don't want any.
But we don't want to, do we want to post our agenda as a public notice? Aside from the regular posting? If we have
It's
it
not
all in
necessary.
one?
Right. What I'm trying to get to, and I apologize if I'm causing more confusion, but having a public informational hearing and a public meeting, the public informational hearing is a public meeting.
Right.
And so we can time one at 6 and we can time one at 6:30, or time them both at 6. And I think that's what you were getting to, Dave, was
Oh,
that you start out with the public hearing. So in other words, not to role play, but the chair, sorry, I get to look at him now.
that's all right.
So the chair would say, call the meeting to order. First order of business is the public informational hearing. Notice has been posted
Posted,
in
right.
accordance with the bylaws.
just
And
ask them,
yada,
'cause
yada,
they said
yada.
no.
They said no to that?
Yeah, so just make sure that that's what, they're the,
Since I kicked the hornet's nest, if I can
Knowledgeable.
help in any way,
Okay.
as a member of this committee and working with my dear colleague, I'd be more than happy to. And I apologize if I've
No, no,
stirred
no, no.
something up, not my
No,
intent.
obviously, we've had some confusion. We're
Right,
still trying to
exactly,
straighten
yep.
it out.
Yep. And I recognize we're under the gun. We have a requirement to get the public information hearing process going, and we want to get our process done for October 2nd so that we can meet all the other requirements, so I get all that.
do we still have a motion on the floor, or did we vote on it?
We still have a motion on the floor for the date and the time.
Okay, so, who made the motion, please?
You did, and Joe seconded it, September 14th.
Okay, could you read it to me?
Kathy made a motion that was seconded by Joe. I'll just do it simple. To hold a public information hearing on September 14th at 6 PM with the regular meeting starting no sooner than 6:30 PM.
Okay, so we're gonna, who was the second?
Joe?
Would you consider withdrawing your second, so we
Sure.
can,
Absolutely. Yep.
okay, so I'm gonna withdraw the motion.
Okay. So what do you want to do?
Well, I'd like to entertain a motion from someone.
I would move that the next meeting of the Community Preservation Committee be held Thursday, September 14th at 6 PM in the Don B. Griffin Room, and further that the public informational hearing occur at that time, at that meeting.
Is there a
Say-
Second.
Can you say that one more time? I want to just make sure I got this right.
Sure. Can I skip all the September 14th stuff?
Sure.
So that
Just wanna make sure.
that meeting be held, and that include the public informational hearing to be held at that time, at that meeting.
Second.
And, okay. And the vote?
Oh, would you
Or
like to
discussion?
could you reread that?
Joe Powers made a motion, and that was seconded, that we'll say at the CPC meeting, regular meeting, will be held Thursday, September 14th at 6 PM, and that the public information hearing to be held at the same time,
At that time, at that meeting.
at that time.
At that meeting.
Oh, I do, to be held at that time, at that meeting. Just didn't
Okay, is
flow.
there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so approved.
Okay.
Okay, so my understanding then is that we can have one agenda. Is that what this is saying? We got one agenda?
Which I'm not writing.
looking for clarification.
Well, I
One
can-
agenda,
I can work offline with somebody on agendas, meeting notices. and
one
hearings.
agenda that would be
Nor am I posting.
posted according to the public hearing requirements. In other words, 2 weeks out, et cetera, in newspapers, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely.
Okay, and we'll get clarification on that from several sources to make sure. We need to approve the payroll for the board secretary from May 2017. Jan, was it for a total of 4 hours?
Yes.
For a total of 4 hours. Can I have a motion to that effect?
I move.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor of approving 4 hours for the board secretary payment?
Aye.
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 Do I sign this for you someplace?
On that one, and on the next page.
Okay. Anything in particular that anybody wants to add to the agenda next month?
Yeah,
Yes.
Kathy, I think in order to address Selectman Howe's concern, at the next meeting, I think we should discuss a policy with regard to the determination of historic resources, and how that impacts various applications, and a policy that is consistent with the statute.
Okay.
Just a comment, I think what he's touched on is just a tip of the iceberg of policies that need to be defined. So if we're gonna go down that path, there's gonna be a lot more that would have to be considered in terms of a policy document.
Okay, well, what other policies do you feel that we need
The
to
whole
consider?
process of submission of applications, criteria for, I mean, I don't want to get into a discussion about it now, but we don't have any written policies.
We have one.
We have one?
We have one. There's a previous policy on the amount of monies and the amount of time that can be taken to
Oh,
effectively do their,
yeah, and it's not really spelled out as a policy per se, it's in the document. But he touches on a very, fairly substantial area.
Yeah.
So,
It is the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
That's okay.
yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's okay, because maybe what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting a process. But I think the direct issue that Mr. Howe had mentioned with regard to the, requirement or lack of requirement to contact other committees and have votes of other committees. In my experience, the only time that issue has come up with regard to the determination of historic resources. I don't think it's come up with regard to, applications under other
has.
sections.
it has under recreation.
It has under
Yeah,
recreation?
we were requested to have a public meeting for all of each year for our application.
Okay, well then maybe we should expand what we discuss at the next meeting beyond historic to include the other categories also.
Well, I think we should address whatever is the most, the biggest concern initially regarding this application year right away.
Right. Which I think is the historic issue.
Okay, and then we can tackle more.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Small moves.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything from the audience that they'd like to contribute? Mr. Crowley? No? Anybody else?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
We got
All in
15 minutes
favor
to
of
get home.
adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
No, that's wrong.
What?
We don't have 16, we have under 15
15 what?
for the game.
Oh.